Hey everybody, part two of today's lessons will be on the learning theory when it comes to personality, or you could call it the behaviorist view. I've been stressing the idea that all behaviors are taught and learned, and this is one of the the reasons why I believe this is to be true. So let's take a little look see into the behaviorist or social or learning theory, as they call it. I wish they didn't have so many names for it. Quite honestly, it makes it really confusing. And last semester, the kids actually thought learning was an example of what did the person physically learn when they were watching a video, and I was trying to say what was the behaviors that were appropriately learned through behaviorism. So I learned a lesson uh, last trimester on that. So here we go. We have the learning approach or social cognition. As we've discussed in class here, cognition means thinking, involving the brain or involving the temporal lobe and the frontal lobes all working together, building memories and actually working through these different topics on how we react to different experiences that show up here. So the learning approach or socially thinking approach. It's broken down into two branches, which is, like I said, behaviorism and social learning theory. So people's behaviors are learned responses. When you come up to anything in life, according to a behaviorist or approach person, there are everything is learned, and that's why we go to high school, that's why we go to school, that's why we have practices so that you can learn the appropriate approach to any of life's issues out there. And that's why sometimes things have been an issue of negative consequences because the person hasn't really learned the correct way of dealing with the situation. So let's take some look see into the behaviorist approach out here. The most famous two behaviorists were John Watson and B.F. Skinner, both trained at Harvard, and they actually believed that anything they could do could be created through a set of rewards or emphasizing reinforcement through different actions. Um, you'll see in a second of what I'm talking about when it comes to the ability to change everybody's behavior by just reinforcing what you want to see done. So socialization is a process they believe that people have learned desirable behaviors through their culture and adopt in their personality. One of the things that we think as Americans is like competitiveness. Other countries value cooperation, while we like, hey, look, we need to be the best person out there, and then if it works out, we kind of struggle with it as an American that we're actually looking to get the collective good over the individual good or vice versa. So let's take a little look see on behaviorism. This gentleman is the one that kind of invented social learning theory. Alfred Bandura said that, hey, look, we form our beliefs by observing the ideas out there, then we think about them, and then we form or individualize them through watching and intimidate. I mean, not intimidating, but im, 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 imitating is what I'm trying to say. Imitating these different behaviors on how people want to react to different situations. So it kind of makes sense when you think about it that we look at something, then we think about it, and then we adopt it or we don't adopt it. In social learning theory, we have um, external factors that are involved in creating our personality. The first ones are different type of skills that we have to pick up there to become a functioning member of a society. We have values, American values opposed to French person's values or German person's values. Americans and Germans tend to be fairly the same type of values when it comes to different topics out there. During World War II, we actually realized that we had more in common with the Germans than we did with any of our fellow allies out there. which made it kind of a quandary for us to have the shared goals and then finally have shared expectations. So we have goals that you need to involved in making our personality, and also expectations. Self-efficacy is the belief that you can actually believe something and then you can do it. So this little kid back here pushing the car there, he believes he can push the car, so he tries his best to do it, and he doesn't have any believe in our own abilities. So
Bandura and his colleagues conduct experiments, manipulating factors that affect self-efficacy and demonstrating how self-efficacy influences performance. In this experiment, researcher Delia Chaffee gives the subject the task of improving production at a model furniture factory. She tells him that his ability to make good decisions for the factory is based on innate intelligence and ability.
The higher one's basic capacities and his skills, the better one will perform. Now, the computer program pretty much paces you through it, evaluating and testing you.
The next subject is told that complex decision-making is an acquirable skill, that his performance can improve through his own efforts.
In any new skill, one doesn't begin with faultless performance, but the more one practices formulating and testing decisions, the better one gets at it.
The first subject, who thinks decision-making ability is a measure of his intelligence, proceeds cautiously. He sets lower goals for himself and is frustrated by an increasing number of incorrect decisions. His confidence, measured by the number on the lower left of the screen, keeps falling, as does his sense of efficacy. The second subject, however, sees early mistakes as a necessary part of learning. He profits by them, and his performance improves. He sets higher goals for himself, and his response to questions about confidence demonstrate an increasing sense of his own efficacy.
The issue is not what you have, but how you use what you have. And from this point of view, you see, you can have the same competencies and subskills and use them poorly, adequately, or extraordinarily, depending on your self-belief. So for this reason, you can often predict people's accomplishments better from the self-belief rather than from their just past.
and that's one of the reasons why I focus on making mistakes in class as a learning experience opposed to being right or wrong. Uh, I've learned a ton more through my mistakes than I have had through my successes. So the idea that, hey, look, by setting goals and learning through our abilities, we become a better person. So the other side of it is the humanist approach, and this has been one that you probably heard when you, if you had Mrs. Grissinger as a English teacher. The two guys that are involved in it are Carl Maslow and, no, my bad, I meant to say Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers. I don't quite know why I put those two together, but they believe that people are free to choose their own lives and are responsible for these choices. So the humanistic approach says, hey, look, you're allowed to choose whatever personality you want. However, you must be willing to take the responsibility for those choices. So let's take a little closer look at those ideas out there. You may have seen this entire triangle that we have here. Everybody is an animal, and we all want to get to the highest level, which is we are living to our fullest potential here. However, along the way, we have all these competing needs that have to be met for us to get to that top level. So the first level is psychological, physiological needs. Are you getting enough food? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you getting enough care for your body? Um, so if those are all taken care of, then you can go to the next level, which is safety and security, then love, and then esteem. And if all those work out there, you become the person that you want to become. Then you are seen as self actualization, that we are striving to live to our fullest potential. And it can be hit. You can be in many different places at the same time along this little um, visual on how we are trying to meet our personality needs or requirements. As Carl Rogers said, people are um, conscious creators of their own personalities. Everything is free choice and free action out there. We need to make sure that you're making the best choice possible that promotes who you want to become, and becoming the most self-actual person as possible. The stressors is the self-concept and how people view us as an individual. And a lot of times that is where the problem is out there, is that people don't appreciate the view of oneself out there. So we have the thought of happiness is the congruence through the self concept in one's life. So if the self concept is good and everybody else views it the same there, and then we have the congruence that says that our personality choices were well met. They call humanism the third force because it's all about free choice, and it kind of puts the ownership of your psychology on yourself, which is kind of a novel idea when related to the other ones. Behaviorism is it's all taught and learned. Freud is the conflict as a child, and then you have humanism now, where you're allowed to freely choose your choices. And then the last approach when it comes to making personality is the psychocultural approach, where we have ethnicity, gender, and culture influences the personality that we're into. Being a man or a woman, Hispanic or Latino, Asian, Caucasian, African American are all going into somebody's ethnicity, and there's choices that are involved with that in your personality. Being a man or a woman will definitely involve with some choices that make your personality. Last but not least, people's culture um, is definitely involved with how people are viewed as people. The perfect example of soccer players or football players in Europe is they're the king athletes over in Europe. You put them here in America, and they're seen as a lower class athlete because, oh, it's only soccer. However, in Europe, it's the number one sport, and they're seen as the most desirable of the athletes out there. So another example, as the one I have on the board here, it talks about individualism versus collectivism. The same topic I brought up before, how Americans were always struggling with being the best person and then competing with other people for making ourselves the best. However, other countries, they see it as, hey, look, we're all in the same country together, and we need to work for the same goal here. So how do we all build this collective mentality over the individual view? It's just a different way of looking at culture. So gender and culture, difference affects attitudes with sharing, caring, and drive. Men are supposed to be driven out there. They're supposed to be more focused on accomplishments. Women are more accepted to be caring and affecting the group or the family as a whole, which can create issues for people. That's my dog Louie. He likes to bark at himself in the sliding glass door because he sees a dog and he doesn't realize that it's him.
He realizes.
Acculturalization is the process of adapting to a new or different culture. Um, my wife and I love it when we go to San Francisco because we blend into the culture of California and the weird kind of like subculture that they have in South San Francisco, which is a little bit um, different from most parts of America. So it's kind of a neat way of seeing the world and actually being a part of it. So that wraps up that little